The used car market isn't cooling. It's imploding right before our eyes. Consumer Reports just released shocking data showing 3.9 million excess vehicles flooding dealerships nationwide, with prices dropping 17% in just 90 days. Think that's normal? It's not. Jason from Denver bought a Ford F-150 last summer for $64,000. Today, that exact same truck is listed at $51,000. That's $13,000 gone, vanished, and he's not alone. This isn't random market fluctuation. It's a calculated reset that's been building for months. Most people will lose thousands. A select few will score once-in-a-generation deals. In the next few minutes, you'll see exactly what's happening, why it was engineered, and how to protect yourself before it's too late. This isn't a temporary dip or seasonal adjustment. We're witnessing a structural collapse of the entire used vehicle ecosystem. Not just price corrections, we're talking about a fundamental breakdown in the market's ability to sustain itself. Interest rates have nearly doubled, inventory has exploded, financing has dried up, and the average payment for a used car has skyrocketed to $733 a month. Let that sink in. $733 for a used car. The warning signs were flashing for months. So why did no one sound the alarm until now? Because the big players, manufacturers, large dealer groups, banks, they all benefited from keeping you in the dark. As long as consumers kept overpaying, the money machine kept running. But now, the music has stopped. Look at what happened just last week. 3 major dealer groups announced they're writing down their used inventory values by an average of 14%. That's unprecedented. They know what's coming. Remember 2008? This is worse for the automotive sector. Back then, new car sales collapsed, but used values remained relatively stable. This time, both markets are in free fall simultaneously, and the timing couldn't be worse. We're entering the winter months, traditionally the slowest season for car sales. Dealers who are already struggling will face 3 months of dismal traffic while their carrying costs continue to mount. This isn't speculation, it's mathematics. The numbers don't lie. 3 years ago, the average used car sold for $21,000. Today, $29,700. That's a 41% increase while wages grew just 14%. But that's only half the story. Interest rates for used vehicles have jumped from an average of 3.9% to 7.3% for prime buyers. For everyone else, double digits, some seeing 14 to 18%. What does this mean in real dollars? Let's break it down. A $30,000 used car at 4% for 60 months meant a $552 monthly payment. That same car today at 7.3% jumps to $598. Add in higher prices, you're looking at $733 a month. American families simply can't afford these payments anymore. Period. But here's what the industry doesn't want you to understand. Affordability isn't just about the monthly payment. It's about the total cost of ownership. Insurance premiums have increased 17% year over year, according to J.D. Power's latest analysis. The average full coverage policy now costs $2,150 annually, up from $1,630 just 3 years ago. Maintenance costs, up 9% according to the Consumer Price Index. Part shortages continue to plague repair shops, driving up both prices and wait times. Even fuel costs remain elevated compared to historical averages. The combined effect? The true monthly cost of vehicle ownership is now approaching $1,100 for the average American household. That's almost 24% of the median take-home pay in this country. Economists generally agree that transportation costs should account for no more than 15% of household income. So what happens when people can't afford to keep their cars? They don't. And that's exactly what we're seeing play out right now. Let me introduce you to the Peterson family from Charlotte. 2 working parents, 2 kids, household income of $85,000, solidly middle class. They financed a 2022 Highlander last year with a $680 monthly payment. After their homeowner's insurance increased and their oldest started braces, that car payment became unsustainable. They tried to trade down, but discovered they were $7,200 underwater. Their options? Keep making payments they can't afford, or voluntarily surrender the vehicle and take the credit hit. Their story is playing out in millions of households across America right now. Banks know what's coming. They're battening down the hatches, and fast. Approval rates have plummeted 23% since January. Minimum credit scores for standard financing have jumped 37 points. Down payment requirements nearly doubled. Daniel, a software engineer with a 720 credit score, was shocked when his application came back, requiring 20% down instead of the 10% advertised. But that's nothing compared to Melissa from Atlanta. With a 640 score, the same score that got her financed 3 years ago, she was flatly denied for a modest $22,000 SUV. The lender's response? Elevated market risk factors. Banks aren't just tightening standards. They're preparing for a wave of defaults. The data confirms it. TransUnion reports that serious delinquencies, 60-plus days late, on auto loans have increased for 7 consecutive quarters. They now stand at 4.3%, the highest level since their records began in 2009. But here's the real warning sign: prime borrowers. Historically, prime auto loan delinquencies hover around 0.4%. They're now at 1.7% and climbing. That's a 325% increase. When the most qualified borrowers start failing to pay, something fundamental has broken in the system. I spoke with an underwriting manager at one of the top 5 auto lenders in the country. He asked to remain anonymous, but what he told me was chilling. We're declining applications today that we would have approved without hesitation 6 months ago. Our internal models show default rates doubling by Q2 next year. We're pulling back while we still can. What does this mean for you? If you're planning to finance a vehicle in the next 12 to 18 months, you face a rapidly shrinking pool of available credit. And what credit remains will come with higher rates, stricter terms, and more limitations. The days of easy auto financing are over, maybe forever. Some lenders are going even further. Ally Financial, one of the largest auto lenders in America, just announced they're reducing their dealer network by 15%. That means hundreds of dealerships will lose access to one of their primary financing sources. The ripple effects will be enormous. I've never seen inventory move this slowly in 27 years of business. That's Mike Romano of Mike's Auto Group in Phoenix. His floor plan interest, the daily cost to keep cars on his lot, has tripled. The average vehicle now sits for 67 days before selling, up from 38 days last year. Each day costs him money. Cox Automotive reports 41% of dealers are now selling vehicles below cost just to generate cash flow. It's not sustainable. When dealers can't move inventory, they stop buying. When they stop buying, wholesale prices collapse. It's already happening. The Manheim Index, which tracks wholesale used car values, recorded its largest single-month drop since 2008 last month. This isn't a correction. It's free fall. Let's put some hard numbers to this. For a typical mid-sized independent dealer with 100 vehicles in inventory, each day those cars sit unsold costs approximately $2,100 in floor plan interest alone. That's $63,000 per month just in financing costs, before rent, payroll, utilities, or any other business expense. When vehicles took 38 days to sell, dealers could manage these carrying costs. At 67 days, they're bleeding out. I visited 3 dealerships in the Dallas-Fort Worth area last week. All 3 had reduced their staff by at least 30% since summer. One owner showed me his books. His cash reserves had dropped from $1.2 million in January to just $317,000 today. 6 more months like this and we're done, he admitted. The industry operates on razor-thin margins in good times. These are not good times. Cox Automotive's Dealer Sentiment Index, which measures how dealers feel about current and future market conditions, just hit its lowest reading ever. Out of 100 possible points, the current reading is 32. For context, during the height of the pandemic shutdowns, it bottomed out at 37. Dealers are more pessimistic now than when they were literally forced to close their doors. And it's not just the smaller operations that are struggling. AutoNation, the largest dealership group in America, just reported a 27% drop in used vehicle gross profit. CarMax's latest quarterly results showed a 16% decline in unit sales and a 40% drop in profits. When the giants are taking hits this big, you know the tsunami has made landfall. 3 massive waves are hitting simultaneously. Repossessions have surged to 15,000 vehicles per day nationwide, double the pre-pandemic average. These aren't just subprime borrowers. Nearly 40% are prime and near prime, customers who simply can't keep up with inflated payments. Meanwhile, the pandemic-era lease bubble is bursting. Leases written in 2020 to 2021 assumed vehicles would hold value. They didn't. Now those off-lease vehicles are flooding back with residual values $7,000 to $9,000 above actual market value. Dealers won't take them, so they're heading straight to auction. The third wave? Rental companies. Hertz just announced plans to liquidate 20% of its fleet, 38,000 vehicles, by year-end. Enterprise and Avis are following suit. One auction manager in Texas told me, "We're running double shifts and still can't process them all." When supply spikes this dramatically, prices don't dip. They collapse. The data from Manheim Auctions tells the story. Conversion rates, the percentage of vehicles that actually sell when they cross the auction block, have dropped from 72% to just 52% in 4 months. Nearly half of all vehicles at auction are going unsold on their first pass. This forces sellers to lower their reserves, creating a downward pricing spiral that accelerates with each passing week. Let's talk about those lease returns for a moment. In 2020 to 2021, manufacturers were desperate to move metal during the pandemic shutdowns. They offered lease deals with artificially inflated residual values, essentially betting that the market would sustain its inflated prices. They bet wrong. A 36-month lease written in mid-2021 is coming due right now. The lease assumed a residual value of perhaps $32,000 on a vehicle that's now worth $25,000 in the real market. The leasing company is facing a $7,000 loss on each vehicle. Multiply that by hundreds of thousands of returning leases, and you're looking at billions in losses for captive finance companies. But here's where it gets really interesting. Many of these leases included a pre-negotiated dealer purchase option. In normal times, dealers would happily buy these lease returns to resell. Not anymore. They're refusing to exercise their purchase options because they know they can't sell these vehicles at a profit. So where do all these lease returns go? Straight to wholesale auctions, further flooding an already saturated market. Now add in the rental fleet liquidations. Rental companies typically follow a strict cycle of acquiring vehicles, running them for 12 to 18 months, and then selling them off. During the pandemic, they held their fleets longer due to new vehicle shortages. Now they're catching up, all at once. Hertz alone will dump nearly 40,000 vehicles into the market by year-end. Enterprise, with its much larger fleet, hasn't announced specific numbers, but industry analysts estimate they'll sell off at least 70,000 to 80,000 units in the same time frame. That's over 100,000 additional used vehicles hitting a market that's already drowning in excess inventory. The physics of supply and demand cannot be denied. When supply vastly exceeds demand, prices must fall. And fall they will. It gets worse. Remember those massive floods in Florida, North Carolina, and Texas last year? Over 300,000 water-damaged vehicles should have been scrapped. They weren't. Tidal washing operations are moving these zombie cars across state lines, cleaning them up and dumping them into the market at too good to be true prices. Consumer Reports discovered vehicles with completely clean Carfax reports that showed clear evidence of water damage when inspected. These aren't just financial disasters. They're death traps with compromised electrical systems and airbag controllers. The market is being contaminated at the exact moment it's most vulnerable. How does this tidal washing work? It's frighteningly simple. A vehicle damaged in Florida gets a salvage title. Someone buys it for pennies on the dollar, transports it to a state with looser title laws, often Pennsylvania, Mississippi, or New Jersey, and registers it there. Through a series of transfers across multiple states, the salvage brand eventually disappears. The vehicle emerges with a clean title in its final destination, ready to trap an unsuspecting buyer. I spoke with Frank Scafidi at the National Insurance Crime Bureau. We're seeing industrial-scale tidal washing operations, he told me. These aren't small-time criminals. These are sophisticated networks moving thousands of vehicles through the system. Their task has been made easier by the desperation of dealers seeking inventory at prices they can still profit from. A water-damaged vehicle bought for $5,000, minimally reconditioned for another $2,000, and sold for $15,000 represents a handsome profit in a market where legitimate vehicles offer razor-thin margins. Consumer Reports' investigation found these vehicles concentrated in certain markets. Atlanta, Dallas, Phoenix, and Las Vegas topped the list. Not coincidentally, these are markets with high demand for affordable used vehicles. The investigation identified certain red flags that appear consistently in these zombie cars. Mismatched upholstery, new carpet in older vehicles, unusual odors masked by heavy air fresheners, and oxidation in unusual places like seat track mechanisms and inside door panels. But the average buyer won't catch these details. And with dealerships cutting back on reconditioning expenses to preserve their dwindling margins, even their inspection processes have become less rigorous. This flood of damaged goods couldn't come at a worse time for the market. It undermines the already fragile consumer confidence and adds yet another reason for buyers to delay purchases. And it's about to get worse. FEMA reports that over 100,000 vehicles were damaged in recent Hurricane Milton flooding across Florida. These vehicles are just beginning their journey through the system. We can't discuss the used car market collapse without addressing the elephant in the room: electric vehicles. The rapid push toward electrification has created unprecedented market distortions. Manufacturers have invested billions in EV production capacity, $104 billion in North America alone, according to AlixPartners. But consumer adoption hasn't kept pace with this massive supply expansion. The result? Dramatic discounting of new EVs, which puts immediate pressure on used EV values. Tesla has cut prices multiple times in the past year, with some models seeing reductions of up to 25%. Other manufacturers have followed suit. When a new Tesla Model Y can be purchased for $42,990, down from $54,990 a year ago, what happens to the value of a one-year-old used Model Y? It plummets. According to data from iSeeCars, used Tesla values have dropped 31.5% year over year, nearly twice the decline rate of the overall used market. A one-year-old Model Y that sold for $60,000 last year might fetch just $41,000 today. This creates a ripple effect across all vehicle segments. As electric vehicles become more affordable, they attract buyers who might otherwise have purchased a late-model used gas vehicle. This reduces demand in that segment, forcing prices lower, which affects the next tier down, and so on. It's a cascade of devaluation. And it's not just Teslas. Ford recently slashed Mustang Mach-E prices by up to $8,100. GM cut Bolt prices by $6,300 before announcing the model's discontinuation. These price reductions on new models translate directly to accelerated depreciation for used models. The residual value projections for EVs have been completely upended. Black Book now estimates that most current EV models will retain just 28 to 35% of their value after 3 years, compared to 45 to 50% for comparable gas vehicles. This rapid depreciation is creating a new class of underwater borrowers, people who financed EVs at their previous higher values and now owe far more than their vehicles are worth. The EV transition is necessary and inevitable, but the market disruption it's creating in the short term is adding fuel to an already raging fire in the used car market. How did we get here? Follow the money. For years, manufacturers have prioritized high-margin trucks and luxury SUVs while strangling production of affordable sedans and compact cars. The average new vehicle now costs $47,000, well beyond what most Americans can afford. This pushed millions of buyers into the used market, inflating prices across the board. But there's a generational shift happening too. Under 35 buyers are increasingly opting out entirely. Rideshare, remote work, and urban living have made car ownership optional for many. J.D. Power reports that first-time buyer rates among 25 to 30-year-olds have dropped 37% in 5 years. Without this entry-level buyer pool, the entire market ladder breaks down. The numbers tell a startling story. In 2015, vehicles priced under $20,000 represented 51% of the used car market, according to Cox Automotive data. Today, just 23%. And it's not because people don't want affordable vehicles, it's because they barely exist anymore. Production of entry-level new vehicles has plummeted. Ford discontinued the Fiesta, Focus, and Fusion. GM killed the Cruze, Impala, and Sonic. These were the vehicles that would have become the affordable used cars of today. Instead, production shifted overwhelmingly to high-margin trucks and SUVs. The Ford F-Series, Chevrolet Silverado, and Ram pickups now account for nearly 20% of all new vehicles sold in America. Add in SUVs, and you're looking at over 75% of the market. This manufacturing strategy made sense when fuel was cheap and credit was easy. Neither is true anymore. Now we have a market flooded with large, expensive vehicles that a growing segment of buyers simply cannot afford, especially at current interest rates. The generational shift compounds the problem. Millennials and Gen Z have different relationships with car ownership than previous generations. They're more urban, more debt-conscious, and more comfortable with alternative transportation models. The numbers are striking. According to J.D. Power, adults under 35 now account for just 22% of used vehicle purchases, down from 33% a decade ago. Their absence from the market removes a critical first rung from the car-buying ladder. Without entry-level buyers absorbing affordable used inventory, the entire ecosystem backs up. Mid-level vehicles can't find buyers either, as their potential purchasers have nowhere to sell their current vehicles. The result is gridlock, a market where inventory accumulates but transactions collapse. Last week, Consumer Reports dropped what might be the final nail in the coffin. Their comprehensive analysis showed that 39% of all used car loans are underwater, meaning owners owe more than their vehicles are worth. The average negative equity? $5,200. But the real shocker was their forecast. Prices will fall another 22 to 29% by early 2026. They're not alone. The Bureau of Consumer Financial Protection just issued a rare market warning, flagging extreme distress signals in auto financing. Their internal models show repossession rates potentially doubling again by mid-2026. This isn't just another market cycle, it's unprecedented. The Consumer Reports analysis went deeper than most industry forecasts. They examined loan-to-value ratios across 2.1 million auto loans originated between 2019 and 2023. Their findings should terrify anyone who's purchased a vehicle in the last 3 years. For vehicles purchased in 2021 to 2022, the peak of the market, the average loan-to-value ratio now stands at 127%. That means the typical buyer from that period owes 27% more than their vehicle is currently worth. Even more concerning, they found that loans originated in the last 18 months are becoming underwater faster than at any point in their data history. Vehicles purchased just 6 months ago are already underwater by an average of $3,100. Consumer Reports' Patrick Olson didn't mince words. We're seeing a perfect storm of factors that point to an unprecedented collapse in used vehicle values. Consumers who bought in the last 3 years are particularly vulnerable. Their analysis included specific forecasts by vehicle segment. Luxury SUVs and full-size trucks face the steepest declines, potentially 29 to 34% by early 2026. Mid-size sedans and compact cars will fare slightly better but still face projected declines of 17 to 22%. The Bureau of Consumer Financial Protection's warning was equally dire. Their report highlighted that auto debt has reached a record $1.6 trillion nationwide, up 65% since 2013. More concerning, the average loan term has stretched to 69.7 months. Longer terms mean borrowers remain underwater longer and have fewer options if their financial situation changes. The BCFP's internal models, which they rarely make public, project repossession rates rising to 3.1% of all outstanding loans by mid-2026, up from the current 1.7%. That would represent approximately 2.8 million vehicles being repossessed nationwide. The implications are staggering. One aspect of this market collapse that few are discussing, the coming consolidation wave. Small and mid-sized independent dealers won't all survive this downturn. Many lack the capital reserves to weather prolonged inventory devaluation and reduce sales volume. The big players, AutoNation, Sonic, Lithia, and of course CarMax, are positioning themselves to acquire distressed dealerships at bargain prices. They're deliberately slowing their inventory purchases now, preserving cash for the coming acquisition spree. I spoke with an M&A consultant who works with several of these large groups. The big boys are licking their chops, he told me off the record. They're identifying acquisition targets now and waiting for the right moment to pounce. They expect to expand their footprint by 15 to 20% through acquisitions over the next 24 months. This consolidation will fundamentally reshape the used car buying experience. The traditional local independent dealer, often family-owned for generations, will become increasingly rare. In their place, we'll see more corporate-owned superstores with algorithmic pricing, standardized processes, and less negotiating flexibility. This isn't necessarily bad for consumers in the long run. The big players can often offer better financing options, more comprehensive warranties, and more consistent reconditioning standards. But it does represent the end of an era in automotive retail. And in the short term, this transition period will be chaotic and potentially costly for unprepared buyers. The consolidation wave also means fewer overall rooftops competing for your business, which may eventually lead to firmer pricing once the current inventory glut is absorbed. The days of haggling your way to a great deal may be numbered. Let's be clear about who gets hurt worst. Anyone who bought at peak prices with long loan terms is trapped. Trade in now? You'll roll thousands in negative equity into your next loan. Wait it out? You'll be underwater for years. Anyone with an EA adjustable rate loan or balloon payment coming due is facing payment shock. Dealers with high overhead and large inventories won't survive. Expect 20 to 30% of independent lots to close by next summer. But there are winners in every crisis. Cash buyers with patience will find incredible deals, especially from January through March 2026, the projected bottom. Buyers focusing on sedans and compact cars rather than SUVs and trucks will face less competition. Those with stellar credit will still find banks willing to lend, often with incentives as lenders compete for the shrinking pool of qualified borrowers. The most vulnerable buyers are those who financed vehicles at the peak with minimal down payments and extended terms. A typical example: someone who purchased a $45,000 SUV in mid-2022 with $2,000 down and a 72-month term. Today, that vehicle might be worth $32,000, but they still owe $38,000. They're trapped, unable to sell, without coming up with $6,000 cash to cover the negative equity. Many of these buyers are now facing financial strain from inflation in other areas: housing costs, food, healthcare. Their car payment, once manageable, has become a crushing burden. But they have no easy exit. Subprime borrowers who managed to get financed during the easy credit days of 2021 to 2022 face particular challenges. Many received loans with initial teaser rates that are now adjusting upward. Some are seeing payment increases of $75 to $150 per month, exactly when their budgets are already stretched to breaking. On the dealer side, the casualties will be concentrated among smaller operations with limited cash reserves and heavily financed inventory. The math is brutal. If a dealer has 100 cars on the lot and values drop 20%, that's a $600,000 hit to their balance sheet overnight. Many don't have the capital to absorb such losses. But for patient buyers with cash or excellent credit, the coming 12 to 18 months represent a once-in-a-generation buying opportunity. The best strategy? Wait for desperate sellers, both private parties and dealers, and be ready to move quickly with cash or pre-approved financing. Focus on vehicles that have already taken their biggest depreciation hit, and avoid models known for continuing steep depreciation curves. Here's what you need to do right now. First, check where you stand. Use Kelley Blue Book in your loan statement to calculate your equity position. If you're underwater by more than $3,000, avoid trading at all costs. Second, if you're shopping, focus on vehicles that have already depreciated heavily, typically 4 to 5-year-old sedans from mainstream brands. These have already taken their biggest depreciation hit. Third, get pre-approved before shopping. Credit unions are still offering rates 2 to 3% below major banks on used vehicles. Finally, consider timing. If you can wait until early 2026, you'll likely see the absolute bottom of this cycle, but only if you're prepared to move quickly when the time comes. Let's dive deeper into each of these steps. When calculating your equity position, be brutally honest. Don't rely on outdated valuations or wishful thinking. Use the Kelley Blue Book private party value, not the higher retail value, as that's closer to what you could actually get if you sold today. If you discover you're significantly underwater, your priority should be capital preservation, not vehicle replacement. For those who absolutely must replace their vehicle despite negative equity, consider inexpensive lease takeovers. Sites like Swap a Lease and LeaseTrader list thousands of people looking to exit their leases early, often with incentives that can offset some of your negative equity. If you're in the market as a buyer, vehicle selection becomes critical. The steepest depreciation hits are happening in specific segments: luxury SUVs, full-size trucks, and anything with poor fuel economy. These vehicles are flooding the market and will continue to see price drops. Instead, focus on vehicles with proven value retention even in down markets. Toyota Camry, Honda Accord, Mazda 3, and similar practical, efficient models from mainstream brands. These vehicles typically experience more gradual depreciation curves and have wider buyer pools even in difficult markets. Regarding financing, the pre-approval step cannot be overstated. Walking into a dealership without secured financing in this market is like walking into a gunfight with a butter knife. Dealers are increasingly desperate to make up front-end losses with back-end financing profit. Having your own financing removes their most powerful profit center. Credit unions remain the bright spot in auto lending. While major banks have tightened standards dramatically, many credit unions are still actively lending at competitive rates. Navy Federal Credit Union, for example, currently offers used car loans starting at 4.99% for well-qualified buyers, nearly 2.5% below the national average. Timing the absolute bottom of the market is impossible, but the data points to early 2026 as the likely nadir of this cycle. Several factors converge at this point. The bulk of pandemic-era leases will have returned to market. The rental fleet purge will be complete. The Federal Reserve will likely have completed its rate-cutting cycle, potentially stabilizing auto loan rates. Seasonal factors, the first quarter is traditionally the slowest for auto sales, will add additional downward pressure. For those who can wait, January through March 2026 will likely offer the absolute best values. But be prepared to move quickly once prices start to stabilize. The recovery, when it comes, may be faster than the decline. Here are 4 specific insider strategies that can save you thousands in this collapsing market. Target orphaned models from discontinued brands or nameplates. Vehicles from brands like Mercury or discontinued models like the Chevrolet Impala often sell for 15 to 20% less than comparable models with ongoing manufacturer support. Their reliability isn't affected, but their resale values take a hit simply due to perception. Focus on off-lease vehicles coming through manufacturers' certified pre-owned programs. As leasing companies face mounting losses on returning leases, many are sending their best examples directly to manufacturer CPO channels to avoid the wholesale price collapse. These vehicles often come with factory warranties and have been carefully maintained to meet lease return standards. Consider demo vehicles, those used by dealer staff or as test drive units. With dealerships cutting costs, many are reducing their demo fleets. These vehicles typically have low miles, full factory warranties, and are technically sold as used, meaning they've already taken their initial depreciation hit. Target vehicles from rental fleets, but be selective. Rental companies typically maintain strict service schedules and liquidate vehicles well before major maintenance issues arise. Focus on mid-sized sedans rather than compact cars or SUVs. Most people will get crushed in this collapse. They'll make emotional decisions based on what they want rather than what's happening in the market. A few will time it right, buying quality vehicles at historic discounts while others panic. Which group will you be in? In my next video, I'll break down the exact models to target, the specific week of the month to buy, and the negotiation script that's working in this market collapse. Hit subscribe now so you don't miss it. Because remember, this isn't a dip, it's a reset. And those who understand what's happening will come out ahead. The used car market as we've known it for the past 3 years is dead. What emerges from this collapse will look very different. More corporate, more data-driven, less negotiable. The traditional dealership model that's persisted for decades is facing an extinction-level event. But for informed consumers, this upheaval creates opportunity. While others panic, you now have the roadmap to navigate what's coming. Stay vigilant, stay informed, and most importantly, stay patient. The rewards for those who do will be substantial. The biggest transfers of wealth don't happen when markets rise. They happen when markets collapse. Position yourself on the right side of this transfer, and you'll look back at 2026 as the year you made one of your smartest financial decisions. The collapse is here. The warning has been issued. The choice is yours.